The first one would be to pass a resolution essentially on benchmarking, saying we're going to look at our village buildings that are greater than 1,000 square feet, so probably this building, the village hall, maybe one other one. And basically say we're going to look at our energy bills. Every month we're going to input it into this free software that the federal government provides called Portfolio Manager. And then once a year we're going to report it out to our citizens and say, this is how much energy we use this year. This is how much electricity, this is how much natural gas, this is how much propane. For us, we look at it as a matter of good governance. It's letting your community members know how much energy is being used and allowing them to see year by year what's going on. But for a lot of municipalities, it's also really instructive. So I was working with the town of Windsor over in Broome County. They just switched their heating system from fuel oil to propane. Thought they were saving a bunch of money, and we went through the bills. We put it all into this software, and it turns out they weren't saving anything. They had done this big project, and unfortunately weren't saving a dime. For other communities, it's really easy for them to suddenly diagnose that, hey, we suddenly have an issue. You're paying year after year, you're paying $5,000 in energy costs, and the next year it jumps up to $7,000, $8,000. That's your signal that something's wrong. That your equipment's either going on the fritz or that there's just something that's not right with your building. So that would only require a resolution. Basically, it requires 5 minutes of someone's time to input the data. It's something that I can definitely help out with. That's a large part of what my role is helping municipalities through that process. So that would get you to 3 of the 4 actions. And then the last one, that's another super easy action, would be to send your code enforcement officer to a training. These are statewide trainings that happen every so often. They can get 6 hours of continuing education credit. It's on the latest version of the Energy Code. At this point, a couple years old. They're going to be instituting a new one in the near future. I've talked to code officers. It's not the most fun training in the world, I'm not going to lie, but it is one of those things that they have to do anyways to get these continuing education credits, and it's something that could help the municipality. And so, we've seen a lot of, code enforcement officers be willing to go and attend one of these trainings. So that would get the 4 actions. That would make a community designated community. I'm hopeful that when the funding comes back out, that will enable the community to apply for funding. We're hopeful that there'll be new actions at that point in time that the community can take. What I've been told, the funding could be back up to those $50,000 levels. For communities that we've seen get this funding before, they've done things such as install a new heating system in their town hall. So I'm working with the town of Hamden right now. They just got a new boiler. I'll be meeting with the town of Middleton next week. They're putting solar at their highway garage. The town of Ulysses in Tompkins County putting in heat pumps in their building as well. And so this is funding that can be used to help move to more efficient systems, help replace equipment that's already failing. A lot of our communities are using it to replace the interior lights to LEDs or to change their lights over to LEDs, their street lights over to LEDs. So it's something to keep in mind. The last 2 things that I'll kind of point out that are kind of married together is, one of the things that I help communities do quite a bit is to look at actions that they might already be interested in. And so I have communities come to me and say, hey, we've been approached by a solar farm about putting in a large solar farm in our area, and we just have no idea how to handle it. And I can help them walk through a solar law or a battery storage law. So you being a village, probably don't have a lot of open space, probably not too worried about these large solar farms coming in. But something I do want to point out that we are starting to see more is these battery storage facilities coming in, or battery storage developers coming in and saying, hey, we want to put in a battery storage facility in your municipality. And these aren't things that are going to go in the middle of nowhere. We've seen them proposed in residential areas. And so the state's put out a model battery law. They put out a model battery permit. If you haven't taken a look at it, yeah, I can definitely send you that information. I think it's really worth taking a look at and considering. The last thing you want is for a battery developer to come here and propose something and you don't have anything on the books that can say one way or the other, we don't want this or we want this. And if you're following all your village codes, it's going to go in. So that's just something that you want to get ahead of, that you don't want to really get behind. And the other thing is really helping municipalities with things that they might be interested in. So I've had a number of municipalities come to me and say, hey, we're really interested in getting an electric vehicle charging station. So right now there's pretty good incentives from New York State in order to put in these charging stations. We've seen communities put them in for next to no cost at all. I often talk to communities about where's a good idea to put these things. You being a village that's right off of a major transit corridor, it's probably a really interesting solution. It brings people in off the highway, can get people to stop and get some meals. Yeah.
Can I ask you, so would we need a private enterprise partner to do that, or would the village actually own the
You could absolutely own. We have many municipalities that own their own charging stations. You know, there's a lot of solutions out there. There's solutions.
We get reimbursed though for the electricity?
For the electricity, yeah. You can set your own charging rates with a lot of these companies. There's a lot of different vendors out there. A lot of different companies make these equipment. If it's what's called a network station, it's connected to the internet. People can find it that way. Really easy software where you can set the rates, where you can say, okay, $1, you know, during the day and $1.50 at night, or vice versa. You can make it so that, you know, village residents can pay less than people outside of the village. So there's a lot of functionality with this software, and it's, you know, something that I can help introduce you to and help walk through and answer any questions. And so, you know, I hope you take a look at this program. Like I said, even if you decide not to do another thing within this program, I strongly encourage you to take that credit, you know, for the actions that you've already taken, get that acknowledgement for the state for doing some pretty positive things that, you know, very few others are doing at this point. I hope you take the further steps to become a clean energy community, but I hope that also in the future, as you're thinking about energy, you have questions, you look to Cooperative Extension and myself as a resource. You know, we're very happy to come out to community meetings. You know, I'm out in communities probably 3 or 4 days a week trying to talk to different board members and, you know, meeting with mayors and with planners, with code enforcement officers, highway supervisors. So any questions that come up with energy, you know, I'm more than happy to answer anything in regards to that. So please see me as that resource.
It would be a good resource. We have a rally coming up downtown renovation initiative.
Yeah.
One of the projects I think is funded is to repave all of our parking lots
Yes.
and redo them. We could incorporate some of the charging
Yeah.
station.
Yeah,
Might work right in.
it's a fantastic, the city of Binghamton and Broome County are looking at doing that exact thing with some of the parking lots that they're redoing right now.
Do you need space to do that with though? I mean, would it take up part of our municipal parking lots to do that? I mean, other than the actual
Other than the actual
stand
parking
that you
space?
plug into, right?
So some municipalities handle it in different ways. Some of them will dedicate, you know, 1 or 2 parking spots to electric vehicle charging stations. The actual infrastructure themselves, not that big. You know, it's a pedestal that's, you know, about, you know, 1.5 feet wide, you know, 6 feet tall. Put a couple bollards in front of it so people don't run into it with their cars that are going a little too quickly. But other than that, doesn't really take up too much space at all. The big thing that you obviously want is a way to connect it into the electricity. So it needs to be close to a power line. Generally, it's better to have it close to a meter that already exists, so you're not having to put in a new meter. But you know, other than that,
No more space than like your average, I'd say, light that's in a parking lot.
Yeah, okay.
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Excuse me with that.
Well,
It doesn't take up as parking lot.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Vehicles.
The charging station, would that include battery storage?
It wouldn't include battery storage in this case. It would just be drawing electricity straight from the grid, and people would be paying for that electricity. We have seen some places start to think about pairing it with battery storage, but it hasn't been a popular thing to this point.
Does anyone have any questions for?
What's the average charging time for one of these things to be effective for a vehicle?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's basically 3 different types of stations. There's a level 1, level 2, and level 3 station. Level 1 station is basically an outlet. You plug into one of those, you're probably going to be, in order to get a full charge for your car, it's going to be 8 to 12 hours. The level 2 charging station is what we generally see municipalities, you know, put in. That's usually close to like 4 to 6 hours. A lot of the times though, people aren't needing a full charge, so they'll just come in, you know, park their car for a couple hours, maybe go get a bite to eat somewhere, come back, and they'll have enough charge to, you know, get home or get to their next station. The last option was called a level 3 charging station, or a DC fast charging station. Those will take about 30 minutes to charge a car. They're prohibitively expensive, I would say, at this point. They're not only the equipment is pretty expensive, $30,000-$40,000, but in terms of how much energy they're drawing, it's incredibly expensive. So you'll see businesses do it sometimes, or you'll see you know, hotels, things of that nature. We haven't seen too many municipalities outside of really large cities install the DC fast charge stations.
Those like a supercharger?
Yeah, almost like a supercharger. Yeah, exactly. So there was, I will say, like a NICEAG pilot that was going on. And they might even still be looking for it, but NICEAG was actually looking for partners in the area. It was supposed to be within a 60-mile radius of Ithaca, because there's already a charging station, a fast charging station in Ithaca. They were actually looking to partner with someone to put those in. I'm not sure whether they're still looking for partners at this point.
the reason I ask is right now, most of our lots are 3 hour parking.
Yeah.
So would it be effective, at least the way we have our parking situation set up this time?
You could always add a tweak to it that says if it's an electric charging station, those people can say they want it.
And 3 hours might be just enough to get you to, like you said, your next station or home.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the other thing that we see with some municipalities is, especially with villages, so there's one in the village of Trumansburg, which I live just outside of, and what we frequently see is people coming from the surrounding area, parking at the station for a couple hours while they're grabbing a bite to eat in the village, and then leaving right afterwards. So they're not there for anywhere close to that 3 hour time.
Yeah, they charge up while they're something.
Yeah, they'll charge up while they get a bite to eat, and then they'll head out, or while they're at the brewery or anything like that.
That makes sense.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. My contact information is right on the front of the page. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, take a look at the different options that are out there. Take credit for the ones that you've already done. Really consider these other ones. I'll send the mayor some more information on the model resolutions and some of these other things, and I hope to talk to you all in the future. So, have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for coming down.
Well done. Thank you. Well done.
Sign thing, do that.
Sign it. What's that?
We're doing it next.
Do me next. Excellent.
6:00.
Sign means money. Boy, he was effective, wasn't he? Hard to follow somebody that's effective, but I'll do my best. My name's Robert Bassett, middle name Clark with an E. That's important, because driving Clark from Ellicottville, my great-great-grandmother lived here over on Page and in Main Street, 41 Page. My grandfather was born in that building. I'm proud of that. I'm here for 5 minutes. First off, Charles H. Bassett Youth Foundation celebrates its 25th year this year. Very proud of that. I'm the founder. We're now giving 26 scholarships, giving out somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 a year. Majority of that in Tyler County, and touching most of the schools, and giving youth volunteer grants, and also promoting local history and heritage. So that's part of the reason I'm here. I want to emphasize that, promoting local history and heritage. We own the Bassett Awaga Center at 34.5 Lake Street. I'd like you to come over anytime, take a tour, give you a personal tour. It's probably the most fascinating history in the village, but it's not open all that often. That's the
I've been there, so
That's the downside of that.
It is fascinating.
But not open.
We are additionally raising an additional $25,000 this year for scholarships, and we're over $20,000 toward that goal. And I know a number of you have deep pockets, so between now and the end of the year, see how many shekels you got in there, and remember, it's all for scholarships and for the community, so it all helps. The second thing on my agenda was thanking you for what you're doing at the Evergreen Cemetery. I have put my own personal stone up there, and so I'm highly vested now, and I love the trenching you're doing, looking good, I hope it works, and I'd just like to make one small comment. When the folks inter or dig the next graves up there, Jeff, this is not a criticism of your people, but when the ruts are left and they're not attended to, the ruts tend to stay there and harden like concrete, and the grass grows up, and then anybody that's walking across there, especially older people, it's a hazard. So it would take only just a little bit of paying attention to level out the ruts after they get in there. I know it's a small thing, but at a later point in time, you got to go in and either that or somebody gets hurt. But you're doing a great job up there, and I really appreciate it. The third item has to do with, and I'm working from 543. I am quite interested in the history of the village and pay attention to the historic markers and the ones that are both being put in and the ones that are disappearing. So my concern is that a local community ought to know what its history is, especially the markers that have been officially authorized by the village and are on the state register. So when markers start to disappear, the community ought to step up and pay attention and say what happened, where did it go. So I would recommend and suggest, without putting extra work on anybody, I understand you still have the Historical Preservation Commission. Maybe within that entity, an interested group of folks could take responsibility, not a single person, but a group of people, to monitor the plaques, possibly helping in restoring them. I think there's people that would get involved if there was an organized effort to take care of and steward the plaques. So rather than create a new committee, maybe through that other group. Working down to number 2, the missing Raphael Pompelli plaque. So Raphael Pompelli, in case you don't know, one of the most significant members of the Pompelli family, he's been missing in action for over a year now. The plaque was put up in front of 337 Front Street, which was Raphael Pompelli's home and also my grandparents' home for over 25 or 30 years. So when plaques disappear, they disappear for a reason. They're either taken, recycled, taken up to Weissman, whatever. Without transparency and communication, the community doesn't know what's going on. When you have people assign that responsibility, they can note it and then trace it and track it. So again, I would suggest, I understand that just by asking the question, that plaque has been found and there's new information. So again, without transparency, without communication, things slip away and are done. I would say not well, not ethically, and without the community really knowing what's going on. Which leads me to the number 1 issue. And so I put a packet together for the trustees. This is not a controversial thing. This is what I would call a non-controversial thing. It's sometimes called easy peasy. It's a simple decision. It's basically to undo what was done. I'm just doing trustees. Rod, I don't know. I don't know if you want to. So basically, in November of 2017, one of the 2 significant bicentennial plaques in Owego disappeared. So again, at the 200th anniversary of Owego, this village board authorized 2 plaques to be put up at the 200th anniversary of Owego. One plaque honored the railroad from Owego to Ithaca, and that sits on the Court Street block facing Dunkin' Donuts. The second plaque honored the most significant female pioneer educator from one of the 2 most important families in the history of Owego. Arguably, the 2 most important families in Owego are the Pompellis and the Camps. Both families came with 4 brothers, women part of the family as well, but those brothers helped build this village from 1800 and on. So I have put together a little story of the Camp family, and to try to lead you in the direction of why in 1987 the village might have said, we need to honor Juliet Maria Camp for starting the first school for females in this village. The very same year that the Owego Free Academy opened. Let me restate that. The same year, the Owego Free Academy in 1828 over on Court Street, this is a 21-year-old woman from a pioneer family, started the first school for ladies and women on Front Street, and then by 1830 turned it into a school for children. And she had 40 to 50 children for 5 years and ran that school for till 1835. So you can imagine what was going through the minds in 1987 with the Bicentennial Committee. This, my friends, is called authentic history. This is real history. These are the people that created this community. All right. So how did we get to a point where that plaque was taken down by a single person in an unauthorized, unethical way, disappeared and has been off the streets for over 2 years, with an entirely new plaque was put up in its place the month afterwards. And I would say that's because the community is not stewarding its historical plaques, basically. I mean, that's what can happen. So here's the good news. We can essentially just get a win-win. Jeff still has this historic plaque. It costs real money. It's authentic. It honors bicentennial history. It honors Owego. It honors this extraordinary young woman. And I am recommending that, based on the research I've done, that the plaque could be put next to and near the original camp family marker, which most of you are unfamiliar with. But this marker is the oldest marker in Owego. Arguably, it was put there around 1810 when William Camp, Nathan Camp, and Anson Camp bought this property from William Pumpelly. And the Camps own both sides of Front Street, all the way to the river, Draper Park. They own that property, and they own all the property on the other side of Parkview to what is now called Parker Lane. That used to be called Camp Lane.
That's in front of Rowena Beck's house.
Yeah. So on the tour of
Can I
Owego,
interrupt you just a second?
Yeah.
So this marker is the Parkview Hotel, their parking lot, and the big brick house there, it's right by their sidewalk.
it's so cool, it's amazing. And then you see the initials down below. Anson Camp is the brother. So this is the boundary between William and again the Camp brothers and the property. So what would be more fitting than just easy peasy, put up Juliet Maria Camp's plaque, let's have a little rededication to a bicentennial plaque, arguably the most important early female in this community, authentic history, and then we can celebrate that. It's still on the historical register for the state. And by the way, her mother hangs in the door, inside the door, a portrait. Her mother, Abigail Whittingsley Camp, inside the historic museum. I think if Abigail could get down off, you folks would be on the run. You read that document, Abigail survived the Battle of Wyoming at 15 months and was put on a raft all the way down to Havre de Grace and survived, married William Camp in Connecticut. The rest is history. Came here and built the community. So, I wasn't going to get worked up, but you can tell I'm passionate about this. I just think it was wrong that it disappeared. And the only way you right or wrong is you do the right thing. This is a petition that was previously submitted to this village board of 25 people that were talked to in just 2 days that said, man, let's put it back up. I mean, I'm willing to go back to the streets and get another 100 if we need, but I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's a controversial thing to do. Okay. The last two things I'll leave you with is a little bit of history. So this is the original partnership agreement from November 1804 between William and Nathan Camp for their store on Front Street. So over 215 years old, handwritten with all four brothers signed. And then arguably the smartest person ever to come out of Owego is the son of William and Abigail, George Sidney Camp. This is the book that he wrote in 1841 called Democracy. This was a response to de Tocqueville and the French criticism of the American system. George Sidney Camp graduated from Owego Free Academy in 1832 at 16, went to Yale. In his sophomore year, he won the essay contest out of Owego at Yale, won the essay contest, drops out, goes to New York, practices law, comes back to Owego, and he runs the table. He's the most famous author and one of the best lawyers. So you're on the shoulders of some great folks here. And I hope you do the right thing with Juliet Marie.
Excuse me. So, somehow I missed the point. Where are you suggesting that we put this plaque?
I think there's a lot of discretion here. Obviously, between the sidewalk and the street, like you would a normal plaque. and probably just to honor the Palladino, so it's not in their line of sight, maybe by the tree there, so it's not, you know, nobody wants to do stuff, but, you know.
Could be right on that marker, right?
Yeah.
Just about where that marker is.
Yeah, or a little bit up from it toward the museum, but generally speaking, it consolidates the camp history, and when people take the tours and they go, wow, there's the original, and there's, now I get it, and then they go to the museum, and, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah, this marker is on Palladino's property on the inside of the sidewalk.
That's right.
This marker, we would put ours
That's right.
between the sidewalk and the property, the middle and the road. But it could be anywhere
Yep.
in that area.
Yeah.
Peter, you got a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Bob on, I'd like to see the plaque back. However, there is a whole set of state instructions on the care and feeding of these plaques. It is the historian's responsibility. It's also, there are issues with the right-of-ways. I sent Fran, I made a comprehensive list of all the plaques in the village. Emma is responsible for putting up many of them. We historians are the ones who are supposed to, and I'm the town historian, I have no standing in the village for this, but there are instructions, there are processes.
I disagree with it. I think that's bogus.
Let him finish.
No, I just, you know.
finish, please.
Bob, I'm arguing for the restoration of the plaque. I'm not arguing with you about that. It's
I've already put
important.
enough time into this. Peter, we talked about this, you've talked about putting it up before, we're now a year
But
later.
the board hasn't heard this. You're making this public, and I'm
This is all
trying
come to
to
the
work.
board before this. This is, the memos, the petition, the whole thing, it's just been disregarded. So-
Well, you brought up a whole process, and I'm just saying there are processes. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'd very much like to see this plaque back up again.
This is where, Peter,
Please,
yeah, well, you just have to understand, if somebody can take a plaque down overnight by themselves, okay, and it just disappears, and yet you can't put back a plaque through some author. This was a plaque that was authorized and put up. It was taken down without authorization. I mean, it's almost like a police report could have been filed.
So how about we the board, will take it and work with our historian in the proper channel, we'll put that up, is that?
No, hey, listen, again, I've already put enough energy into this, and, you know, it's all about doing the right thing.
Correct.
So if anybody can figure out how to do the right thing without going another year, that's great.
Also, before you go on, from Valley Plaque, Jeff is restoring, or you sent that to the foundry to have it restored. So I reported that, and Emma worked with Jeff, and so the Pompelli plaque will be back. I don't know if you have a timeline.
No, I don't.
But that's not lost. It is.
Rusty?
So, Jeff, you have this plaque.
Yes, the village has
The
that.
village has this plaque, and it's in mediocre shape. It needs some painting, refurbishing, whatever.
Well,
Needs something. I know you had once upon a time said that you would be more than happy to incur that expense of painting that up or something. I don't know if you're still interested in that.
Yeah, listen, that offer was made a year ago.
Okay. I'm just
And, you know, at
asking.
some point, you stop offering when things are not, taken up. So, repainting that plaque would probably take a day.
It's just Rust-Oleum
Yeah.
yellow and.
So the idea that these plaques need, anybody that pays attention to the plaques in the village, you could redo all the plaques in the village in 1 week, just getting a group together.
Does it need to be media blasted off? or-
No, not really.
It's just
a little bit.
Just wire brush,
Yeah, okay.
Rust-Oleum,
This is not-
sunflower,
Yeah,
and
this is-
I forget the blue, but it's all on the state
Okay.
website how to do this.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, listen,
But
you got too much.
the state DOT stopped us. I was trying to do this. They wanted me to indemnify.
Thank you, Darcy.
The state DOT wanted me to indemnify them about the plaques on 17C before we got, I mean, maybe we should have just done it and told them to.
Beg forgiveness.
But there's also the property owner's permission too. So there is, it's not as, and I'm sorry, I was talking to this.
I wanted to ask Peter one question. Sure. You told us, to your knowledge, that the state rules and stuff have, the historian has certain authorities over some of these things. What historian? Because we have a county historian, a town historian, and a village historian. So what historian do you have?
The county historian is our boss. Emma is my supervisor, and Mr. Castellucci. So, I mean, this would be Steve Bucherma. And
that's the question I'm asking. Who would have that authority?
But Emma is nominally. I mean, I don't know. We're not that litigious.
We can get this information to Steve to get working with Emma to get this resolved, especially since we have the flag.
And does someone in that chain of command have the authority to say, with the homeowner's permission, I want to put the plaque here?
Well, originally I had proposed to Bob that we put it in front of the Elks parking lot, which is where the Ely House was, where the WeGo female institute, the other was. And I went to the Elks and they agreed that it could go on the street there. Emma felt it should go back in the parking lot. And I think, why have a plaque if it's not out on the street?
Well, it's sort of like Source Mica factory.
Right.
It's
I
on the
would
lane.
put that out on the. But these are not. This is what the argument has devolved into, and it's become. There's more issues than the simple ones. And I wish we could put it in, my opinion, put it in front of the Elks parking lot, because they've agreed to it. And I don't know whether this other person has agreed to having it on their property. They probably would say yes. I'm not, and it would be fine where Bob wants it. I don't want to argue any of those points. I was only arguing about there are processes. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
So the question becomes, one of them is, do we have the authority, without asking some historian or some state group or whatever, to place this on a piece of village property? That's the question.
I don't think there's any law. I mean,
Yeah, so in the sense of you're putting a sign up in the village's right of way, I think you have to always think about, you can put up traffic control signs. If it's not a traffic control sign, then it needs to go on your own property. And if this is a private landowner's property, then you would need to get their permission to do it.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about putting it between the sidewalk and the curb, which is our property. It's not
Usually, I mean, you have to check to see if there's a deed there or if it's a right of way. If it's a right of way, it's for purposes of traffic and passing by, not for just putting up any signs.
But if the Elks has already agreed to that, and this is talking about the institute, which was there, so it seems like that location would be the more appropriate location, unless you were going to describe, if it's in front of Joe Palladino's house, that this was someplace else.
The other thing you have to consider, of course, is we do have the Historic Preservation Commission. Is this an historic district?
Yeah, it is.
So I think I want to fly by them.
Well, our suggestion that the OHPC have, a standing committee to monitor these things is probably a good idea.
I think that they probably don't, they are the standing committee. I think that they're the people who are tasked with kind of maintaining this stuff. They don't need to make a committee among themselves, they already. They're supposed to keep track of the historically designated landmarks and districts, and insofar as something's worthy of having a plaque of it, I think they need people to do it. So, I think it's, you folks probably aren't the body to say, okay, yeah, let's put it here.
Right.
I think that's really the Historic Preservation Commission to say, we agree, this is the place for a historically significant sign, commemorating whatever it is to go. And then they need to fly by you the wording of it and say, here is what we recommend to you. And then I think you folks might finally approve it. Again,
But if the historian has the authority, then
that's the piece
come to us, right?
Well, that's the piece off the top of my head. I'm not sure if the historian can just do it, because we do have our local historic preservation law.
Well, maybe
which says
working with
in the-
OHPC.
Right, but my point is in the district, like OHPC is the one who says, yeah, this is the stuff that can go wherever it is, and we give our permission and a certificate of appropriateness to it. It's probably likely they would agree because it's historically appropriate, but we probably can't just skip over it.
Emma has put up 40 of these. She really is the go-to
Yeah,
person.
some of the process. So we'll get with her, figure out the process. Should we refer it to OHPC? Should we make like a resolution to refer it to OHPC?
Okay.
Or are you gonna?
We'll just put it on the
You gonna handle
agenda.
that one? All right, so we'll get that. So if anybody else here is ready just, do you have anything else, Peter?
I'm sorry, I was just here to,
Okay.
Did you have another issue?
I'm sorry.
Did you have another issue you want to bring up?
No, I was just here to answer.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry it got to be such a kerfuffle. It should be a happy thing.
I didn't want to like stick by anything in here or something. You want to do department head reports?
Okay, in July, we were dispatched to 141 calls, including 5 mutual aid. We did not have a crew for 6 calls, 2 of which were primary calls because of our staffing. It's just the way it is. Also, tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, we're going to be receiving our new ambulance to us, finally, after a year and a half. So, anybody that wants to come see the new beauty, just remember, it's in the rough. We don't have anything in it yet and whatnot. It still has to go through state inspection.
So this is the VCI ambulance, and we'll get that
Yes.
tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was a glitch in the DMV, their side this time.